I never thought my life could turn into a battlefield over one machine. Not just any machine, though. My Harley. My steel beast. My freedom on two wheels. I had worked for it, bled for it, and cherished every second I spent polishing its chrome. That bike wasn't just a bike. It was my lifeline, the thing that made the world feel wide open when everything else in life closed in on me. That morning, the air smelled of cut grass and gasoline, the kind of morning that made you itch for a ride. I had just stepped out of the garage, rag in hand, the Harley gleaming so bright it could blind you if the sun hit it right. I admired it for a moment, proud. That's when I heard footsteps on the gravel. I looked up. My jaw nearly hit the floor. Jason, the HOA president's son, tall, lanky, with a swagger that screamed arrogance. He didn't knock, didn't say hello, just walked into my driveway. Like he owned the place. His eyes landed on my Harley, and I'll never forget the way his face lit up like a spoiled kid on Christmas morning. "Nice bike," he said, running his hand over the seat like he already had the keys. "Mom says I'm getting this for my birthday." I blinked, stunned. Surely he was joking. "Excuse me?" asked, thinking maybe I had misheard, but no. His smirk widened. "Yeah, she said you were giving it to me. You can just leave the keys in it. Saves me the trouble." For a moment, all I could do was laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd. "Not a chance, kid. This Harley isn't for sale. Not now. Not ever." His face hardened. "You don't get it. My mom runs this HOA. She can make your life hell. She said you'd give it to me." And there it was. The entitlement. The threat. The Karen bloodline dripping right through him. I stepped closer, my voice steady but firm. "Tell your mom she's out of her mind. This bike is mine. Stays mine." Jason's jaw tightened, and he snapped a picture of the Harley with his phone. "You'll regret this," he muttered before storming off. At that moment I thought, it was over. Just another brat throwing a tantrum. But what I didn't know was that Jason's little outburst was only the beginning of a storm that would shake this entire neighborhood to its core. The next day a knock rattled my front door. I opened it to find none other than Karen herself. Sunglasses perched on her nose, clipboard in hand, lips pursed so tight she looked like she had bitten into a lemon. And behind her, Jason grinning ear to ear like he'd already won. "We need to talk about your vehicle," Karen began, her tone clipped and superior. "It's not compliant with HOA guidelines. It lowers property values, but don't worry. We have a solution. You'll sign it over to my son, and I'll waive the fines I'm about to start issuing." I swear I felt my blood boil. She wasn't asking. She was demanding. Manipulating me like I was a pawn in her twisted little HOA empire. "No," I said, loud and clear. "That Harley is mine. And it's staying right where it is." Jason's grin faltered. Karen tilted her sunglasses just enough to reveal the fury blazing in her eyes. "You'll regret this," she hissed. Before spinning on her heel and marching off, for a moment I thought maybe she was bluffing. Maybe it was just talk. But that night I woke up to the sound of footsteps outside. Out. My heart raced as I grabbed a flashlight and rushed to the garage, and there he was. Jason, fumbling with the ignition of my Harley, a key in his hand. My Harley leaning slightly under his weight like he was seconds away from riding off into the night. "Get off my bike," I bellowed. He jumped, eyes wide with guilt, but instead of shame, he spat, "You don't understand." Mom said it's mine. I stepped forward, fists clenched. "Touch it again, and you'll deal with me, not your mom." Jason bolted, but not before shouting, "We'll see about that." The next morning, 2 police officers were at my door. My gut twisted. As they explained, Karen had filed a complaint. According to her, I had threatened Jason that I was unstable, a danger to the community. I stood there stunned, trying to explain the truth. The cops listened, their faces skeptical, even sympathetic, but they had to do their job. The Harley asked their questions, and eventually left. But the seed had been planted. Karen wasn't finished. She slapped me with fines so ridiculous I almost laughed. Unauthorized vehicle display, noise disturbance, nuisance to property values. She even circulated a letter to neighbors, painting me as some dangerous thug hoarding. illegal property. Suddenly neighbors I had barbecued with, waved to every morning, were avoiding me. Eyes darting away, conversations cut short. I felt cornered. Alone, outnumbered. But Karen didn't know one thing. My cousin works in the state attorney's office. And unlike her, he doesn't play games. I made one call, just one. And the tide began to turn. When the cops came back the second time, they weren't there for me. They were there for Karen and Jason. Fraud, harassment, filing false reports. Abuse of HOA power. Watching her face as they read her rights, the shock, the fury, the disbelief, was a moment I'll never forget. Jason stood behind her, pale as a ghost, no longer smirking. But that wasn't the end. That was just the beginning, because when the state attorney's office dug deeper into HOA records, the skeletons started falling out of the closet. Years of shady fines, community funds misplaced, projects that never existed, families bullied into selling their homes below value. Karen had built her empire on lies and fear. And now, it was all unraveling. Neighbors who had once avoided me started speaking up. One by one, they told their stories of threats, of bogus fines, of intimidation. And suddenly, the silence that Karen had thrived on was shattered. The community turned. They rallied, not just against her, but together. Without her stranglehold, people saw what life could be like. Free, fair. United Karen wasn't just facing fines anymore. She was facing criminal charges. Jason? He had to face the embarrassment of being exposed as a thief and a liar that birthday. Harley dream evaporated faster than smoke in the wind, and me. I didn't just keep my Harley. I became the guy people looked to for strength, for advice, for help. The same neighbors who once crossed the street to avoid me were now thanking me for standing up when they couldn't. That Harley wasn't just my freedom anymore. It became the symbol of theirs, too. But here's the part you need to hear. The sweetest justice of all. Karen lost everything. Her position, her reputation, her power, her money. She'd spent years building herself up as the queen of this neighborhood, the iron fist of the HOA, and in the end, she crumbled into nothing. I still ride my Harley. And every time I rev that engine, I think about the battle I fought, the war I won, the freedom that bike represents. So to everyone watching this, don't let anyone bully you out of what's yours. Don't let them strip away your joy, your peace, your freedom. Because in the end, people like Karen, they always fall. And trust me, you'll want to stick around till the end. Because what happened with Karen was nothing compared to the justice that followed. Drop a comment if you've ever dealt with an HOA nightmare like mine. Smash that like button if you believe in standing your ground. And subscribe because I've got more stories of revenge, justice, and taking back what's yours that will make your jaw drop. The road always belongs to the rider. Always. When I thought it was all over after Karen and Jason were cuffed, I was wrong. People like Karen don't go down quietly. She had built her identity on control, and even in handcuffs. She tried to twist the world around her. The very next week, letters started showing up in people's mailboxes, typed in bold, official-sounding language, stamped with the HOAS seal. Only the HOA didn't really exist anymore, not with the board under investigation. Still, Karen had written them. She accused me of fraudulent claims and misuse of law enforcement. She painted herself as the victim, claiming I had orchestrated everything to humiliate her and her son. I remember walking down the street one morning, the roar of my Harley echoing off the houses, and seeing neighbors clutching those letters like they were gospel. Some glared, some whispered. Or, for a moment, I wondered if she had managed to turn the tide again. But then, one by one, the whispers changed. A neighbor named Tom, a quiet guy, kept to himself, stopped me by my driveway. "Hey," he said, glancing around like he didn't want anyone overhearing. She did the same thing to me. "Find me $5,000 for a paint color," she said. Was non-compliant. I had to repaint my whole house. Another neighbor, Linda, chimed in later. She threatened me with foreclosure when I put in a swing set for my grandkids. Said it wasn't allowed. Like dominoes falling, the stories poured in. Everyone had one, some worse than mine. Karen had ruled with fear, and for years no one had stood up to her. Till now. I felt the weight of it all settling on my shoulders. This wasn't just about my Harley anymore. This was about a neighborhood reclaiming its dignity. Still, Karen wasn't finished. She hired a lawyer, some slick-talking guy with a sharp suit and sharper tongue, and tried to spin everything in her favor. I'll never forget sitting in that hearing, watching her strut into the room like she still owned it. Jason followed. Behind, sulking, refusing to meet my eyes, her lawyer stood up first. Ladies and gentlemen, what we have here is a gross overreaction. My client, a respected community leader, has been falsely accused by a disgruntled neighbor. This entire case is a personal vendetta blown out of proportion. I clenched my fists under the table. Respected community leader? That was rich. Then it was the state. AttorneysTurn.com. Collected. Ruthless. My cousin laid out document after document, HOA budgets. Fine records. Bank statements that didn't add up. Pictures of projects that never happened. Invoices. Paid to companies that didn't exist. The room grew quiet as the lies stacked higher and higher. And finally, my cousin dropped the bomb. A recording. Karen's voice, sharp and clear, from a board meeting a year prior. If they don't like it, fine them until they break. People don't fight back when they're drowning in debt. Gasps rippled through the room. Even Jason looked stunned. Karen's face drained of color, but she tried to recover. It's taken out of context, she snapped. You don't understand, but nobody was listening. Not anymore. The hearing ended with an order. Karen removed from the HOA entirely. Jason banned from community events after his attempted theft. But beyond that, criminal charges were officially moving forward. Fraud, embezzlement, harassment. For the first time, Karen wasn't the one holding the clipboard. She was the one under the spotlight, squirming. Still, the battle wasn't over. People were divided. Some neighbors, the ones who had benefited from Karen's favoritism, the ones who got their lawns ignored or their fines, mysteriously waived, still clung to her side. They whispered that I was exaggerating, that I was using my connections to ruin her. And I'll admit, some nights, it wore on me. I'd sit in my garage staring at the Harley, wondering if it was worth it. Was I really protecting my freedom? Or had I just ignited a civil war on my street? But then I'd think about Jason's smug face, about Karen standing on my porch telling me my Harley was hers to give away. The fire inside me burned hotter. One evening there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find 3 neighbors. Barely knew. They looked nervous, glancing over their shoulders. Can we come in? One asked. Inside, they told me everything. How Karen had pressured them to sign over parts of their property for community projects that never existed. How she had threatened to fine one man's mother so badly she nearly lost her home. How she had used HOA funds to pay for private vacations. They handed me documents, copies of emails, letters, proof. They trusted me with it because I was the only one who had stood up to her. I felt the weight of it in my hands. This wasn't just my fight anymore. It was everyone's. The state attorney's office devoured the evidence. Karen's lawyer tried to stall, tried to intimidate, but it was like holding back a tidal wave with a paper cup. The deeper they dug, the uglier it got in the community. They started to rally. People painted their houses however they wanted. They put up fences, gardens, swing sets. They stopped living in fear. The neighborhood began to feel alive again, colorful, free. And every time I rolled down the street on my Harley, neighbors waved instead of turning away. Kids ran up to see the bike. I felt like part of something again. Not the outcast Karen had tried to make me, but Karen. She spiraled. I saw her once, standing on her porch, screaming into a phone. Jason sat on the steps, head in his hands. They weren't the rulers of the neighborhood anymore. They were the pariahs. The final nail came when the state attorney filed. The official charges: embezzlement, fraud, harassment, abuse of authority. The trial was set. I didn't have to testify. The evidence was overwhelming. But I went anyway. I wanted to see it. I wanted to watch the queen fall. And fall she did. When the verdict was read, Karen collapsed in her chair, her face pale, her sunglasses hiding tears she couldn't stop. Jason muttered something under his breath, but no one cared. The courtroom buzzed with relief, with justice. Walking out of that courthouse, I felt lighter than I had in years, and when I fired up my Harley that night, the engine's roar wasn't just for me. It was for every neighbor who had been silenced, for every family she had hurt, for every person who had been told, "You'll regret this." No, Karen, you're the one who regrets it now. The courtroom verdict was only the beginning of Karen's fall. If I thought watching her pale face as the gavel came down was satisfying, I hadn't seen anything yet. Justice has a way of snowballing, and Karen was standing at the bottom of the hill. Within weeks, the news spread like wildfire. Local stations picked up the story. HOA president charged with fraud, embezzlement, and harassment. Her name was plastered on headlines. Neighbors who once praised her now whispered about her in disgust. I saw the signs on her house first. The bank had moved fast. Foreclosure notices slapped across the front door in bright red. For years she had siphoned HOA funds, but now every penny had been accounted for. Every missing dollar traced. And when the restitution demands came, she couldn't pay. Her empire crumbled overnight. Jason, once the golden boy of entitlement, was left stranded. I'd see him wandering the neighborhood sometimes, head down, no more swagger in his step. His so-called friends had abandoned him. Parents who once let their kids hang around him now pulled them away. It wasn't just the HOA president's son anymore. He was the thief who tried to steal my Harley. The boy who cried to mommy when the world didn't hand him everything. One night, I saw him sitting on the curb near the clubhouse, shoulders slumped, staring at nothing. For a second, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered the look on his face when he declared, "Mom said it's mine." No, Jason wasn't a victim. He was a product of Karen's world, and now he had to live with it. Karen herself vanished for a while. Rumor had it she moved into a small apartment in a neighboring town, stripped of her title, her power, her kingdom. The woman, who once strutted through the neighborhood with sunglasses and a clipboard, now avoided the spotlight like the plague. But the neighborhood, that's where the real story unfolded. Without Karen's iron fist, people began to breathe again. Lawns bloomed with flowers of every color. Kids' laughter filled the streets as swing sets, trampolines, and basketball hoops sprouted in backyards. One family painted their shutters bright red, the very color Karen had found someone else for before. The entire block cheered. I'll never forget the night the community gathered for the first time without her. No HOA board, no rules. Just neighbors, free for once. They set up grills in the cul-de-sac. Music played. Kids ran wild. Someone tapped me on the shoulder. "Hey," Tom said, the quiet neighbor who'd first told me about Karen's bogus fines. "This is because of you. You stood up when none of us could." I shook my head. "It wasn't just me. You all had it in you. I just had a Harley worth fighting for." He laughed, and the others joined in. Deep down, I knew it was true. That Harley wasn't just mine anymore. It was the symbol of defiance. Of standing up to the bully that had ruled us for too long. In the weeks that followed, things changed fast. A new HOA was formed this time, built by the community, for the community. Fair rules, voted on together. No more dictatorships, no more threats. People actually smiled when they paid their dues, because they saw where the money went. New benches by the park, better streetlights, a rebuilt playground, and me. I wasn't the outcast anymore. I was the guy people waved to when I rumbled by on my Harley. Kids shouted, "Cool bike." Neighbors nodded with respect. Even the ones who had once avoided me now stopped to chat to thank me for not backing down. But Karen, she couldn't stay away forever. One afternoon, months after the trial, I spotted her car creeping down the street. She was in the passenger seat, sunglasses hiding her face, Jason driving with a scowl. They didn't stop, didn't wave, just drove slow, looking out the windows like ghosts haunting the life they used to own. People noticed, heads turned, whispers spread, but no one confronted them. They didn't need to. Karen was powerless now. She wasn't the queen anymore. just another bitter memory fading into the past. As for me, I found peace again. My rides became longer, freer. Each time I hit the highway, wind in my face, engine roaring beneath me, I thought about what we'd survived, about how close I'd come to losing it all, and how sweet it felt to win. Because the truth is, this wasn't just about a Harley, it was about dignity, about not letting someone take what you love because they think they're entitled to it. It was about showing a neighborhood that fear only works if you let it, and in the end, Karen's downfall wasn't just justice for me, it was justice for everyone. Sometimes, late at night, I'll sit in the garage polishing the Harley like I used to. The chrome shines back at me, reflecting not just my face, but everything it stands for. Freedom, resilience, victory, and I'll remember the first words Jason ever said to me. Mom says I'm getting this for my birthday, not in this lifetime. So, to everyone watching this, hear me now. Don't let anyone, not a neighbor, not a boss, not an HOA president with a clipboard and a bad attitude, take what's yours. Stand your ground. Fight for it, because in the end, people like Karen always fall. And if you've ever faced an HOA nightmare, drop your story in the comments. Let's shine a light on all the Karens out there. Smash that like button if you believe in standing your ground, and don't forget to subscribe, because I've got more stories of revenge, justice, and payback that will make your jaw drop. Road belongs to the rider, always. And this rider isn't giving up his Harley for anyone.